All right, so let's get going here. So some things to keep in mind for the next couple hours that we'll be spending together. Like I just mentioned, we will be recording to help document our work. And we really want to emphasize, the team wants to emphasize that we need your expertise. Everyone here, all the constituencies here, we really want and need your expertise to do the work that we'll be talking about and we'll be introducing. And the goal is really to bring the campus together to figure out how to implement the framework and the ideas that we'll be sharing. So we want to be super intentional about that. And also to be clear, we haven't made decisions about how to implement the ideas that we'll be sharing and how to implement kind of the framework as a whole that we'll be talking about. So want to be super clear about that. We really want to bring folks together to do so. And you know, we keep saying this just because our students are so awesome with their leadership. We really want to follow their example and listen, learn, and level up through the work that we do. So, you know, want to call that out because, you know, they're such awesome leaders and that is a great example for us to follow. So I'm going to stop sharing just for a quick minute here so you can see the Guided Pathways team here. And so I will call on you folks just because I'll stop sharing and then we can I'll get back to sharing. So onboarding leads, please.
Everyone, so Keisha Meacham, and I am one of the onboarding leads who is also a general counselor on campus.
Hilda Fernandez, buenos dias, English faculty onboarding as well. I feel like we should do something like that.
Some sort of way. Meta majors.
Hi, I'm Natalie Leteri. I am one of the co-leads for program mapping and meta majors, rebranded as areas of interest.
Hello, my name is Fatima Jenna. I'm a counselor and an instructor, and I'm the other co-lead for program mapping areas of interest, aka meta majors.
Communications team.
Good morning, everybody. Janie Garcia here on the communication team. My position is program coordinator for adult education within outreach.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. We made it. Woo! Yeah, so Janie and I are the communications leads here, and just wanted to let all of you know, per Isaac's comment, I was thinking a lot about this morning, and I'm looking forward to building relationships. I'm really looking forward to using this Guided Pathways work to connect with people individually, using some of our technology, but part of my is to keep things simple. And so it just occurred to me, why not focus on building relationships with everyone on campus? So that's going to be a big thing I'm going to be focused on in this work. So good to see everyone.
Tech and data team.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Chavez. I'm a student success specialist in the counseling office. I operate our OWL Scholars program, which is our campus's early alert system, and along with Elaine Coyle, one of the leads of the tech and data team.
Hi, happy Friday. I'm Elaine, along with Chris. I am the college researcher for the college, and I'm looking forward to working with Chris to provide support for the effort. And would just say, you know, we have an open door policy as we go through this process. Feel free to reach out to either of us at any point in time. Thank you for being here today.
My name is Isaac Escoto. I'm a counselor here at Foothill, and I am playing a facilitator role. So many moving parts with this Guided Pathways work that we're trying to, you know, help it all work together. Logistics leads.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lori Scolari, AVP of Student Services, and I want whatever Che has in his coffee. Don't we all? But I have the honor of working with this amazing team of leaders, and I am a logistical lead along with my colleague, Melissa.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Melissa Cervantes, I'm the Dean of Equity, and again, very excited to be part of this team and to be of support and very intentional as we infuse equity with Guided Pathways as we move forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, team. So we just wanted to stop sharing there for a second so you could put maybe a name to the face if you haven't had a chance to meet us, or even if you know us, it's still nice to see each other's face on a Friday morning. All right, so let's get going here. So something to keep in mind throughout the activity and even after, we'll keep this open for a bit. What we're doing is a cheers, concerns, and contemplations group map here. So for folks who maybe haven't had a chance to use Group Map here, this is an ongoing document that you can add to throughout the presentation. So if anything comes up that you're super excited about and you're feeling cheerful about and you want to highlight, if you could do so kind of in that cheers column. The middle column there is concerns. If you've got questions, if you feel like, uh-oh, we feel like we might need to talk about that a little bit more, that's perfect for the concerns. And then for the contemplations, that's just kind of what you're thinking and wondering. Maybe it's not quite a cheer or a concern. You're like, huh, then that's what you would put there in that column there. So in order to add to that, I don't have the chat open at the moment, but I'm sure that the
link is already in the chat.
Lori's way ahead of me. Perfect.
On it.
Thank you. So we've got that link right there. And then if you would like, you can just kind of go to that, click on the link, or you can go to the join.groupmap.com and type in that code right there. We will share this throughout the presentation. We'll put links in there throughout the presentation. So, you know, if you missed this at the moment, we can put it in there throughout the presentation. But please feel free, definitely, to let us know kind of how you're thinking, and we will compile that. All right.
So to get us going here, we want to first talk about why guided pathways. And I'm here at this moment to give you an idea of what could be, what is possible with the, you know, loads of information and examples we have within our state of what the guided pathways framework could look like. And then what better way to do that than to highlight student experience. Next slide. So this is Ruby. Ruby is going places, but she's not sure if she's college ready. What if I told you all that with guided pathways, she wouldn't have to be college ready to earn a certificate, a degree, or transfer? Next slide. So let's give some possibilities of her story here. Ruby has decided to go to college, but she's already overwhelmed with the onerous of deciding on her goals and having them be clear, because that's college ready, right? But the possibility of a guided pathways framework at a college makes our colleges student ready versus the other way around. So for example, for her clear goals, programs are already fully mapped and aligned with further education and career advancement. So even if a student is exploring her options or just unsure, we already have much more guidance to present that student on her quest to make her goals clear. Let's say Ruby has an academic plan, but the courses she needs are not offered in the quarter that she needs them. Well, with programs being fully mapped out, we can make predictable schedules that are set based on the analysis that we've already been doing for each department, and the setup is successful not only for us as staff, but more importantly for Ruby and students like her. Next slide. So assessment, we all have students who go through this, right? Ruby's math assessment discourages her from choosing a major she actually is pretty interested in, which is computer science. In a guided pathways framework model, assessment is used to identify where students need the support and furthers that by placing them with services as well as classes. And if you're thinking to yourself, this already happens sometimes, or I make sure this happens, that's amazing. Guided pathways is not necessarily new, it's just more systemic. So think about those support systems that you already have in place or that you contribute to, and think about what that looks like systematically for all students, no matter what. On another new student intake moment would be maybe she gets discouraged, Ruby gets discouraged from computer science, so she's an undecided student. So we're gonna generously, as a college-ready campus, allow her to explore on her own. Maybe that works for some students, but the data shows us that most students, they struggle with that. That's too overwhelming for them. So in a college, a guided pathway framework college, instruction is in that foundational skills. It's integrated in all of these programs, in all of the mapping. And so students who are even exploring still are guided through that pathway. See what I did there? Next slide.
I did.
And I apologize, I'm not reading the title, so hopefully you've been keeping up with me. So let's look at instruction for Ruby. Ruby doesn't really know what her learning outcomes are, right? Like most students to Ruby, her learning outcome is I'm gonna hopefully pass and hopefully not fail. But we as teachers know that that's not true. We lead our teaching with objectives and what we want our students to learn. So as a program mapping component, faculty have collaborated to define and assess the learning outcomes for entire programs. Those are definitive, and that information, most importantly, is available to students from day one. That is the Guided Pathways framework. Another example, Ruby doesn't get support from a teacher because her teacher is isolated and unsupported. We have many different types of faculty, and there are many different constraints, right? So think of this as, of course, being student focused, but it also is supposed to work for staff and faculty. It's supposed to give, this isolated and unsupported teacher, no matter what they're standing, training and support to be able to assess these program learning outcomes and to provide from day one the support that students need academically through instruction. Next slide. So progress monitoring and support. Like many students, Ruby got discouraged at her last counseling meeting. And so, she hasn't made time to come back, or she just, is avoiding it like a plague because she just is scared and her progress is dwindling. Well, with student progress in a Guided Pathways framework, the possibility could be that we discover a system that monitors these meetings and this progress more efficiently, and also with frequent feedback. And in order to do that, I'm going to echo what my colleagues have already said, and that is this is a campus effort. And our student just yesterday on their follow-up to their first takeover this quarter mentioned that if you want to go somewhere quickly, you go on your own, but if you want to go far, you go together. So think of it this way: don't balk today and worry like this is going to be all on us as faculty, or this is going to be all on us as support services. That's the point of Guided Pathways, to bring us together, to be able to do all of the work to support our students together. Sorry, I went off on a tangent a little bit. So let's say Ruby took a computer science course, right? Because she was so interested in that major that she's like, well, I'm gonna at least take one for an elective. Well, she excels. She just takes to it like it was like she was meant to be for it. But maybe her counselor in one of their meetings or in a follow-up isn't able to gauge that because she's a C student, within the schooling structure that we know a lot of students struggle with. Well, in a Guided Pathways model, counselors work closely with program faculty. So that way there's a clear division of labor for us to monitor our students together and their progress. Next slide. So finally, completion. Unfortunately, the data shows statewide, as well as at our own college, that in the college ready model, Ruby, like many students, drops out, maybe multiple times. In a Guided Pathways, what could be student ready model, the Guided Pathways system supports students like Ruby to see their academic and professional goals to completion. And she gets a really groovy hat thanks to it. So now that we've talked about why Guided Pathways in the context of what could be, what's possible, what we've already seen out there in the Guided Pathways California world, let's talk about why Guided Pathways for Foothill specifically. And to help us do that, I'm going to introduce two very important people leading a very important team, and that is our data and tech team, Elaine and Chris.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Janie. So right here, you kind of get maybe a little bit of snapshot of kind of what is kind of a student's journey as they go through, entry, connection, entry, progress, and completion is kind of gives a little snapshot of just kind of all the things that students deal with, kind of what are the things that maybe make them lose momentum and actually, lead to dropping out. So together with Elaine, we work together as part of the data and tech team. We work together with the other teams and the leaders to kind of identify what would maybe some data points that really highlight the student experience and that might lead to kind of explaining why we need to be a little bit more student-centered in our focus and kind of what leads to the Guided Pathways model. So we came up with these data points with the team together and kind of decided to tell it from a kind of a cohort model with using Ruby as a center, which Elaine can talk about next.
All right. First, again, echoing Chris, giving a shout out to our data advisors, which include the rest of the institutional research planning team, Doreen Finkelstein, Lisa Lee, and Lara Triona, as well as Adrian Hippolyte Equity Office. We work together to think about sort of what data points may help tell a story and get us thinking about sort of what could be in terms of revisioning of guided pathways. So we thought today, you know, after building on what Janie has proposed in terms of what it could be, let's look at what is actually happening for someone like Ruby right now in the here and now. So we decided to start with the fall 2016 cohort. And one of the reasons we did that is, you know, we recognize that there have been some changes at the college, especially, you know, not just locally with us, but also with some of the state requirements. We did that because we also wanted to follow her full narrative, just the way that Janie just presented it to us, to follow up through completion. So you will see sort of four sort of data points or milestones, right? Things that we would hope someone like Ruby would accomplish while she's here with us. So let's see what's happened.
So in general, so for a kind of connection piece, so for every 10 students who submit an application for the first time in fall, only 6 of them actually continue on to enroll with Foothill from the initial 10 students. Another 2 do enroll at another community college. So here we're seeing that, you know, out of the 10 students who submit an application, only 6 actually end up enrolling in Foothill. So what can we do to make sure that those other 4 students are actually, you know, and completing through to enroll within Foothill? Next slide.
Okay, so we're going to go back and talk about Ruby now. But we wanted to give you a context of, you know, what is sort of the students that we're looking at and how many actually end up as part of sort of Ruby's story. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. So you can forgive us, Elaine, she's a school teacher as well, got her kids in the background, so bear with us a little bit. So at orientation, Ruby meets 9 other students enrolling for the first time in fall 2016. So how many, as Ruby progresses through her academic journey, how many more students will stay in Ruby's circle?
Okay, next slide. Thanks. Okay. Thank you for that. That's why we cannot do this by ourselves. So we started the story with Ruby and her 9 other sort of peers, fellow students. When it comes time to re-enroll in the winter, right? And we know one of the things that leads students on that pathway is continuous enrollment. We see that Ruby only has 5 other friends or students or peers, right, in her classes at this point, who started with her, right, in the fall. The additional 4 students do not re-enroll.
Next slide, please. So then even going from winter to spring term, Ruby sees 3 other students, only sees 3 other students who enroll from fall to winter. So Foothill, we do not retain those 6 students. So as you can see, Ruby's circle is already starting to get a little smaller just within that very first year of her attending Foothill.
All right. And so already after a year, you know, we've lost sort of, or I don't want to say lost, Foothill had the potential to try to maximize the number of students who continuously enroll, right? Now, keep in mind, these are first-time students, right? And many of which, you know, are seeking sort of some kind of completion that is in the form of either a certificate, degree completion, or transfer. So 2 other milestones that we hope for students who are interested in those educational goals is the completion of transfer level English and math. And only Ruby is the one to have completed that within 1 year. Okay. Next slide, please.
And so then when it comes to, one more, jump back one more, Isaac. Sorry. And then, so again, so Ruby was the only one out of those 10 to actually complete English for English level or college level math and English in their first year. And again, those are pre 8705 numbers. You know, when we get to spring 2020, we get to the end of the academic year last year, Ruby is still the only one who actually completed a degree within that 4 years. So from Footill's perspective, what do we need to do to make sure that those 9 other students are completing their degree as well? Next slide. So this really speaks to why GP, why guided pathways. So a lot of it goes into how do we keep Ruby Circle from getting smaller? Do we make sure other students do not leave? The other students do not leave? Do we make sure that there are other students to join our circle should the others leave? In my opinion, it should be a combination of both, right? We should be doing most to serve the students who choose Foothill and choose to progress through Foothill. And we should also be doing as much to outreach the community to make sure students around, around our service area want to be part of Foothill and want to be part of Ruby Circle. And of course, how do we ensure that Ruby knows that faculty, staff, and campus administrators are in fact part of our circle? Students don't just go through this in isolation. And that's kind of what this, all my colleagues have been talking about. This is really a truly campus-wide effort. How do we make sure that we infuse that sense of community into our students' experience here at Foothill? And so that's kind of one of the driving forces behind why we are trying to do Guided Pathways GP.
Right, and one of the ways to reinforce community, certainly from being student ready, is that the student continues to see that their community stays relatively stable, right? We know that our students are, have other demands, some of which, are less under our control, but, there is sort of a different sense in terms of belonging and connection if you see that the folks you started with continue to sort of not return over time or not meet the same milestones. And then, so Guided Pathways is a mechanism that can align all the work that we do to help reinforce that sense of belonging and connection, even when students are, fellow students are unable to continue at the same pace as some of our other students, that we can continue to enforce that sense of community in these different circles.
Awesome. Thank you very much. It's something else to see those numbers, right? We're kind of used to seeing who we see and kind of stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. That's kind of an eye opener, at least it was for me. Thank you very much, Chris and Elena. It's not easy to go through data and make it easy to understand and turn into a narrative. So thank you both very, very much. So moving forward, so the mission statement and framework of Guided Pathways. For those of you that were able to join us a couple weeks ago, we had a Guided Pathways mission statement brown bag where folks from across campus came together and we took a look at the mission statement for Guided Pathways at the time. And we felt that it needed a little bit of a refresh, which is good practice for mission statements in general. So we did that. We had a group map, we had breakout rooms. It was super cool, a lot of great energy. And the GP leads took all the feedback that we heard, and we met this last week, and we wordsmithed as best as we could with what we heard, and we tried to really capture the spirit of what we heard and what we discussed at that brown bag. And so this is also up on our website. This is the current mission statement that we'll be moving forward for Guided Pathways. And it says, the mission of GP is for all parts of the campus community to work together to be student ready by removing structural barriers to learning. We aim to create clear pathways within an equitable system that includes ample, ongoing support for each student to engage from connection to entry through progress to completion. We recognize the strengths and diverse experiences our students bring to the college, and we aim to support their growth as global citizens. And so we started this morning by saying, we really want to be collaborative and hear from everyone and work together. This is an example of the team doing that work to the best of our ability. This is informed by many different folks that joined us a couple of weeks ago, engaged in conversations and added to the group map. So very similar to kind of the process that we're doing today for feedback. And so that's what we have here. So we wanted to give you an opportunity to take a look at the mission statement that will really guide the Guided Pathways work that the GP leads will continue to look throughout the years of the work that we do to help guide the work that we have in front of us. So we've been mentioning the framework for Guided Pathways, and so we wanted to spend a quick couple of minutes here going over what that framework looks like so that you have a reference to what is guiding our work and kind of where we're coming from. So for those of you that have been a part of Guided Pathways efforts or have known about Guided Pathways efforts, you'll be familiar with the 4 pillars. And so what we want to mention is that the 4 pillars are integrated into the Lost Momentum framework. which is the framework that the Guided Pathways team is currently following. And so there are 4 phases for this lost momentum framework. And this is really about looking at the student experience from early on, before they even apply, all the way through hopefully completing their goals with us. And so at the connection phase, that's from the interest in the college enrollment to the application. So even before applying, even when there's just interest, when they see something on their website, they see an ad on Instagram stories, you know, all those different examples of where students start to learn from Foothill. That's about Foothill. That's the connection phase. And then there's the entry phase. And that's enrollment to completion of first college level course. So there's some space there between connection and entry, depending on the student. And then for the progress piece, that's the entry into the program of study up to 75% of the requirement, completion of the requirements for that program of study. And then the completion phase, that's when the student completes the program of study to credential with labor market value. And so that is kind of the big picture that we're looking at the student experience. And we want to be really intentional kind of visually here, showing that Equity Plan 2.0 does and will guide all of the efforts all through the whole phase here of the lost momentum framework. So the student experience from before they even apply to finishing their goal, our Equity 2.0 document will help guide the work that we do there. And so as Melissa mentioned, that is why she's one of our co-leads, one of our support pieces of this work, is that we want to be super intentional about equity informing and rely on equity, specifically Equity Plan 2.0, to guide this work. And so we really want to make sure that it's clear that all of this is interwoven, and that is one of the big pieces that will continue to guide our work. Okay, so we're going to move into an activity here that we're super excited about to help us all kind of get into this work and better understand the framework and kind of better understand student experiences.
So just like Chair emphatically and energetically highlighted the importance of relationship, if us coming together and building community means that we are going to be able to build community with our students. So it's, you know, it's like the lesson that your parents teach you. Whatever you project onto others, they will project onto you. So just reminding us of that. So as Isaac mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, student voice, student stories, and student success are at the heart of our GP work. So we will now engage in an activity that centers on real student stories. These are real student stories. Next slide, please.
We also want to mention that, so Lori Scolari, our Associate Vice President of Student Services, she really helped us with this idea, and she helped us with the student stories. So like to Hila's point, these are actual students that she's worked with. And so thank you so much, Lori, for helping us and partnering with this activity.
And also her husband is the artist who created the pictures. So again, family really helps family. And so this is the feel, and we are hoping that you get excited about the energy and the community that we're building here. So how will this happen? You will be placed in one of 9 breakout rooms that will focus on one student story. For instance, I'm part of the Reggie team. And so at the beginning of the breakout session, I will ask for a volunteer note taker and a volunteer timekeeper, since I will be facilitating the breakout session. Similarly, a GP co-lead will assume the facilitator role in each breakout group and ask for 2 volunteers. Next slide. Once the volunteers are identified, you will have 15 minutes to read the team student story. So in this case, it would be Ruby, noting the particulars of her college journey. Then each group will have 20 minutes to discuss 4 sets of questions guided by the 4 phases of the Lost Momentum framework. When you return from the breakout session, we will invite you to respond to the reflection questions that we will post in the chat, and also, of course, post in the page shared earlier in the presentation. In essence, through this activity, we are coming together as community, building from our cumulative knowledge and experiences to listen, learn, and level up by retracing each student's college journey to identify and eliminate barriers.
So I'm working right now on getting the rooms all set up. I'm sorry, Jamie?
Is it okay if I just add something?
Absolutely. We actually
So
need.
I'm watching the numbers go down a little bit, and I'm kind of laughing to myself because I just wanted to highlight some empathy that our team had in planning this presentation, and that is we've all been in a meeting where as soon as the group work starts, we leave. And look, there are many valid reasons why that happens, but we want to, I guess, just emphasize the fact that every level of engagement in this process is so fruitful to these efforts. So even if you can't stay for the whole thing because you got a class or whatever you have going on, please just stay as long as you can. That's why we're facilitating, to try to take some of that pressure off of you, and just engage in any way that you can. Read the story, and you could always send us your feedback later. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I'm still working on this, folks. Making sure that we've got a lead per group here.